Thank you for tuning in to The Balancing Fact. I'm Angela Calais. I have been a full-time realtor for the past 15 years. With 3 kids running a real estate brokerage, I work to dispel the myth that you cannot have a work-life balance when working in real estate. That balance looks different for everybody. Today, my guest is Dr. Dave Gustitus. Dr. Dave runs a successful chiropractic practice in Franklin, Wisconsin. He has extensive postgraduate training in postural correction, whiplash, pregnancy, pediatrics, functional medicine, brain health, and more. He is certified in chiropractic biophysics, chiropractic pediatrics, and as a chiropractic wellness practitioner. When he's not doing adjustments with his patients, he teaches others how to manage stress, prevent injuries, and achieve peak performance in all facets of life. We all have been challenged throughout life with stress, long-term stress and short-term, and the consequences that come from being under stress. I'm honored that Dr. Dave has agreed to talk to me today on this topic. Hi, Dr. Dave. Thank you for sitting with me today and talking about stress.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, stress, I feel like, is something everybody has. It's not. It's not just realtor moms who deal with that kind of thing, and we all know that there are ways of dealing with stress or how to overcome stress. But can you tell me? Let's start by talking a little bit about what actually causes stress, on how, like, I know that, work will stress me out, kids will stress me out, but why is that? What is actually happening in my body that is causing this reaction?
Well, the perception or the experience of stress starts with your interpretation of your environment. So, for 2 people, the same situation will not necessarily be stressful. I give the analogy in the office a lot that if you have a new recruit in the Army that goes over to Iraq and he's fighting alongside a 10-year veteran who's been over there for 10 years and had bullets whizzing over his head and bombs blasting everywhere. The 2 are going to experience that first day or that next bullet whizzing over their head completely differently, right? The one's going to duck and say, "Oh my God, I want to go home," and the other ones we say, well, "Yeah, that happens every day,"
Yeah.
And so if you compare that to childhood or child raising, your kids and the noises they make and the demands they place on you, or work stresses like, "Oh my gosh, my internet's down and I can't see any of my listings, to show somebody," or all those different things are going to be interpreted differently depending upon your preparation, your prior experiences, right? So from that signal, from that interpretation, your brain determines, oh, is this a threat to me? How big of a threat? How urgent is it? And beyond that, how long of a threat is going to be? Is this something that will go away as soon as the internet comes back up, or my kid, calms down, having their lunch, and having a happy tummy again, or what will it take? Or is this something that's going to be a long haul? It's going to take days, weeks to resolve.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but you're right. That makes total sense, because things that totally stress out my husband, I'm like, just sit back and relax. I got this. You know what I mean? And vice versa.
Right.
So how do you think we can, I know there's different signs of stress and determining, okay, what are some things we might recognize as a symptom or of stress? Because I know there's been times where I think I'm handling everything fine. Like, I got this. We're cool. And then I'll realize that I've been clenching my jaw like all day long. So are there certain things we can look for to recognize, oh, this is because I'm under stress?
Sure. That's a great example of the jaw clenching. That's really common. People grind their teeth. Maybe they're not clenching, but they're grinding their teeth. And if you zoom out of that a little bit and think about, where are you holding tension? Where are you, your body will work on trying to handle the challenge, even if your mind thinks, "Oh, I've got this," right? We always think about, oh, there's the mind and there's the body. And this new concept, of mind body medicine. Oh, we need to work the two together. Like, how did that ever get separated? I don't know how, but somehow, now we're getting back to this mind body connection. Like, yeah, everything that you experience up here in your thought world, you experience it in your body simultaneously, because there's no boundary of where all those brain chemicals, the stress neurotransmitters that you create up here, or the intention of handling some crisis up here, it doesn't stop here. It flows all the way through your whole system. And so where you might experience it, first of all, you might experience it where you have areas of imbalance, like, spinal misalignments, those areas that have had prior injuries. Maybe like low back pain is your thing. And wow, every time I get stressed, I get low back pain really bad, or I get headaches all the time. And if I get stressed, the headaches get worse. Other people, it might be, I'm kind of weak in the stomach. I get kind of queasy every time I get stressed or scared. And so stress comes along and, I have stomach upset, indigestion, that kind of thing. Or it's run of the bathroom, they have diarrhea, it could be anything that is exacerbated or worsened because of the stress.
Mm-hmm. Are there any things that in your practice you think would be okay? Maybe this is somebody who's going through like a longer term stress thing. If they're getting like a business up and running, that's something that takes months, a year, and you might be under stress for a long period of time. Is there any difference between that long period of stress as opposed to, well, I'm really stressed out today because we're moving, but I'll relax tomorrow, kind of thing?
Right. Yeah, there's a huge difference. Everybody knows the impact of adrenaline, right? We've heard of the stories of the mom whose kid was, pinned underneath a car, and she has superhuman strength and gets this huge adrenaline rush and is able to do amazing things. That's a short-term stress release hormone. Long-term stress release, we circulate cortisol. So the adrenal glands produce both. They respond to the short term with adrenaline, but that we can't handle long-term adrenaline. It's like trying to sprint for the long haul, like sprinting a marathon, right? It's not possible. But when it comes to, I've got a marathon stress problem, then we release cortisol, and cortisol helps us to adapt to a long-term stress environment. But unfortunately, it really compromises a lot of our core functions and shifts us into catabolism, which is basically body breakdown. We start throwing everything on the fire. We start breaking down certainly fats. We burn off our sugars. We start burning some of our muscle even. And long-term stress can be really damaging. We prioritize survival over rebuilding, repairing, and normal functioning of even our immune systems or our digestive systems. So long-term stress is really detrimental and one of the main drivers of the majority of our health problems in our country.
Is that correlation that you just mentioned, is that why we've heard that, well, if you're under stress, it might be hard for you to lose weight because of the way that your body is like metabolizing when you're under stress with the sugars and things like that?
Yes. So let's just say you're in a long-term, more mental, emotional stress, right? But you're not necessarily physically active. Your brain is working overtime and you're cranking out all these thoughts and activities and expectations and worries. You'll still release the same chemistry in the body, but we're not burning it off, right? So what will happen is when you release cortisol is derived from cholesterol. So between cholesterol and cortisol, there's a pathway of conversion. In order to make cholesterol, our body craves sugar and fat. So when we get stressed out, our cravings for sugar and fat go up. So like salty.
That's why we go for the tub of ice cream or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
French fries. Like,
it all makes sense now.
Yeah. Give me a tub of, potato chips or, something greasy and something fat and something carb loaded.
Yeah. So would you, for somebody who's either under short-term stress or long-term stress, is there a different way you would recommend approaching one or the other? Or is it going to be different per person? Or how do we solve this? How do we fix this?
Well, yeah, I don't necessarily compartmentalize the two or treat them differently. It's more of a matter of severity. Acute stress experiences or acute stress health related issues are often more like, I got an injury, right? I hurt myself because as I was moving, like you said, I was moving and I hurt my back, or I just need to take a break. I just need a nap. I need to sleep this off because I got too wound up. But then that stress is gone to, tomorrow, and you'll be okay, right? Long-term stress, though, now we're really looking at, okay, what are the health ramifications of that? What's happening in the body? Do we need to shore up some deficiencies in that person's health profile beyond structural? Because as a chiropractor, as I'm looking at the structure primarily, but that structure influences the nervous system and it protects the nervous system. So they're intimately related. So long-term stress impacts include nervous system changes to wire us to be prepared for the long haul. And that transition back from being wired for long-term stress experience back to present time living, right? So present time consciousness, not worried about a month from now, not worried about, a year from now. Now I'm living back closer to reality and today, then I can pull back my resources and focus on healing, digestion, immune function, what needs to happen right now, right? Being present in the moment.
So kind of like baby steps, like let's just take one thing at a time and just focus on this one thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So something that I've been trying to do for years, and I struggle with consistency, and I think a lot of people are probably very similar, is I try to do a meditation in the morning. Try to decrease that, that fight or flight. I think you and I have talked about that before, and get those levels down. And I was actually reading a book, and it was saying, kind of dispelling that, well, just get in whatever you can. If you're only meditating for 3 minutes, that's fine. If you're only meditating for 5 minutes, whatever you can do is better than nothing. And the book was, the author was saying, no, you really got to meditate longer than that to actually see the results. Like you might have mental clarity in that moment, but to actually get those levels down, you're going to have to do like a longer meditation. Is that?
Yeah. So, right. So there's getting by, right? Like, if I just laid down for 5 minutes, I know I didn't sleep more than 4 hours last night, but if I can just take a little cat nap for 5 minutes, I'll be able to get through the day. Right. You get to a point where that sleep deprivation will catch up to you. Right.
Yeah.
And that meditation of 3 minutes versus a good 20-minute meditation, it's not going to reset you. And even though like getting through the day is not equivalent to health.
True. Yeah.
And and there's health, and there's optimal function, and there's prevention and wellness, and then there's getting by. And so at some point we're going to have to decide, each individual has to decide, where do you want your health trajectory to be? Are you trying to just maintain? Are you trying to just not lose? Or are you trying to gain and optimize and expand?
Yeah. I think there's sometimes even stress brought on by the fact that I know I have to do these stress relieving things. I know I have to eat better. I know I have to see my chiropractor. I know I have to meditate, or I'm using oils or something. And there's just so much information. There's so many things that you think you could do that actually the stress of implementing these things brings on more stress. And then you feel like, well, I'm failing because I didn't do any of these things, because I'm so worried about doing all of them.
Right. Right. Yeah. I love the saying that in order to do something, you don't have to do everything, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you have to do it all, but you can prioritize the major health habits that you can start with in order to get the biggest bang for your buck.
Yeah.
And
Are there any certain types of foods that are good for stress release or that you should totally avoid?
right. Well, the conventional wisdom would say, eat your comfort foods, right? You get
Right.
stressed out
Yeah.
and go get some mac and
Oh,
cheese,
now I feel
you know.
better. And then the next day you're kicking yourself. Yeah.
Right, right. That's a conventional wisdom. So I would say there's not really anything particularly um, more, healthier during stress than if you were not experiencing stress. But under stressful times, let's just say we're in one of the more stressful days of our lives, your energy consumption will probably go up, right? Because you're going to be revving your engine, even if it's just your brain. If your brain is taxed, your brain consumes 30% of your body's energy. So if you're overworking your brain, your energy demand went up. So you're going to have to eat enough. And
that's why even at sitting at a desk all day working, you're exhausted and you haven't actually moved much, but that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And then hydration is another huge issue. You can have 20% reduced energy just because of a 5% dehydration.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So your brain, needs all those resources, but it also needs enough of a liquid medium to get those resources up to the brain.
Mm-hmm. So whether it's a short-term stress or a long-term stress, really you have to be hydrating your body and focusing on what's going on right then. So then your energy, your brain power, your energy isn't being depleted by kind of being all over the place and worrying about all of these other things, just kind of focusing on one thing at a time.
Yeah. And I guess to answer your question about like what foods would be more beneficial, for me, it's still the same healthy lineup. I wouldn't eat any differently if I was in a stressful day than if I was in a less stressful day. But like I said, I might include more resources because I might be consuming more. I might be burning more calories because of the extra physical or mental efforts.
Yeah. So maybe still consume those healthy foods. You just might need more of them. Right.
Yep,
okay.
For sure. And it's something I think it's important to think about too, is as your brain it consumes glucose, so blood sugar levels, when they drop, will really be felt in the brain. So when you experience low blood sugar, you can have brain fog and you can have tiredness, feelings, especially for those who don't have healthy blood sugar levels or healthy blood sugar control. As you and I have had conversations about ketogenic diets, that kind of thing in the past, that's something that I practice is, living more or less a ketogenic lifestyle, right? So that helps to burn fat as a priority versus sugar, and helps you create more ketones versus burning ketones in your brain versus burning sugar. Your brain will still burn some sugar, but giving the brain some of those ketones will help your brain to maintain that sharp focus, even when it's active or extra active. So ketones are a little bit more stable in terms of that energy output or as a fuel compared to blood sugar, especially for those who have poorly managed or regulated blood sugar. So those who are more on the roller coaster or have insulin resistance, or those ups and downs of blood sugar. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, that's something I've been trying to follow too. It's totally a shift though. And I feel like you have to mentally put yourself in a position where I'm going to tackle this. You have to recognize what your shortcomings are. And I think a lot of times it's managing stress, responding to stress. So I might be really stressed out about something, but that doesn't mean I have to take it out on everybody around me. How am I going to manage this in a way that it doesn't affect everybody in my environment? Is there ever a time where being under stress could be a positive thing? So I'm thinking of situations where, maybe somebody is in danger or something really big is going on, and like necessarily my body needs to be under stress to be able to tackle that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. So there's like that crisis situation where you need to have that, you need to be able to summon all of your resources, all of your faculties to respond to the situation, whether it's physically or mentally. When, our brain focuses in on threats, we have parts of our brain that are just threat detectors, and they have imagine a little scribe next to that part of the brain that writes down and it's part of the brain's memory center. It takes note of what that threat was. And then the next time you encounter anything like it, it says, hey, this is just like that. React faster.
Yeah.
Similar to the immune system with antibodies. We have antibody left over from a prior infection.
Sure.
Next time you find that pathogen, that microbe in your body, oh, hey, let's respond and get a jump on it, right? So we want to be able to summon everything from our body to be able to, our resources in order to be able to respond to the threat. And otherwise too, if we didn't have a little bit of stress, if we didn't have a little bit of feeling of, I better get up today because, if I lay down here, I need to eat. I need to work. I need to make a little money. I need to take care of my kids or take care of myself. If we don't have any reason to get out of bed with zero stress, then we just lay there and just continue to relax. So there's a balance between that as well.
Right. So for somebody who's maybe starting to recognize that they're under this longer term of stress, they're recognizing that every day they're having that backache or every day they're having those digestive issues. What would you say? What would you advise? And I know as a doctor, you don't want to advise anything, but if you had to say, okay, if you're under a long-term stress, what is the first thing you want to tackle? Should I look at my food? Should I call my doctor? Should I go to a chiropractor? Should I try some meditation? Is there like a safe recommendation for anybody that somebody should be able to implement? And just kind of do a little bit at a time. So like what I feel like a lot of times what people will do is they'll have all of these things and they'll try to implement everything at once, and then they'll fail because they won't do any of it because they try too much at once. So I usually tell people, like, let's just start with one thing. Like, let's master the going to bed on time. And then once you get into that habit, let's add in, something else. So where would you say a good safe starting point would be for pretty much anybody?
Yeah, it depends on how acute the situation is. Like if this person is to the point where they're like hyperventilating in the middle of their day and they like, they're just begging for help, right? Then they need a timeout. They need to stop because, they're heading towards a health disaster, a health crisis, right? But if let's just say it's short of that, but they feel really unhappy, unhealthy, unstable, and like, this is not going to last very long. I can keep going, but boy, I wish somebody knew how badly I was feeling. Then that person also, I would say, you need to build in some downtime. You need to give yourself some downtime, maybe go for a walk during the day. Right? Just get away, get outside, listen to the rhythms and the sounds of nature, because the pace that nature goes is more sustainable than the pace that we go in our own heads, in our own business world, right? We accelerate everything, like with our technologies, with our ability to multiply our effects. We make things go faster, which is great, but our biology can't always keep up, so we need to take time out during the day to certainly go for exercise, get a walk and get some fresh air and reconnect to nature's pace. And at night, the other flip side of that recommendation, like you said, starting with some good sleep, I think downtime at night would be the next recommendation. Just go ahead and make sure you go to bed and just turn it off. You have to turn it off if you want to be able to turn it on. And I think just recovering that sense of, all right, I need to gain control over my my on switch and my off switch. And then beyond that, say, okay, now I have some sense of, okay, I'm not a slave to this, the demands upon me. I am in control of what I choose to, when I choose to work and when I choose not to work. Even if I need to work, if I don't get control of that, then it will control me, and the consequences will come when I least expect them.
Yeah. I think going for a walk, yeah, that is a huge just release. Like it's just, and like you mentioned, just listen to the rhythm. Like I think a lot of people will, they might go for a walk, but they're listening maybe to a program or something on the AirPods. And I talk to a lot of people who are listening to things like Motive for Murder podcasts and like Dateline podcasts and things like that, where it's like, I don't think you're really like taking advantage of this time where that's really where your mind can rest. And sometimes I'll listen to like audiobooks and things, and it might be like business related or otherwise. And it'll just, my mind will just start thinking of things. And I take out my phone and I write it down right away, because that's a huge release for me, is getting out the things that I know are just kind of in the background somewhere. So like if you're going for a walk, like fill that time with positive things for your brain, because even if you find it entertaining to listen to these negative things, there is nothing positive to your body that is going to come from, listening to murder podcasts or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And I think there's that aspect of what type of stimulation are we exposed to? We are, with our phones, there's so much stimulation coming at us, looking at the number of hours each day, each week that we're spending on our phones stimulated, that requires a break. Nobody's going to go backwards and completely get off of their technology, but we need to build in that off time. And if you go outside for a walk, or even, in the dead of winter, rainy day, to me, doesn't really matter. Just dress appropriately, get out there and just pay attention to that season, that time of day. Try to get out a little bit too, if you can, in the morning, in the sunrise, where the sky is a little orange, or at sunset when the sky is a little orange. That will signal to your brain what time of day it is, because that whole blue light from midday exposure carried over to the night with screen time. Yeah. Because screen time, unless it's, blue light filtered, where you get that amber color, it will be, that blue light will tell your brain that it's midday. So getting a little bit more in touch with not only the nature's sounds, the smells of nature, and the time of year it is, and the pace of nature, but also getting that reconnected to those circadian rhythms that nature provides through just the sunlight. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love that. I think that is definitely a good place to start for somebody who's finding themselves under stress, is go for a walk, man. Like unless you're in dire straits, you're going to be calling your doctor, go for a walk. And I think that's something where even if it's 5, 10, we're in Wisconsin, so there are days where it's really cold, but there's some science behind it being in a cold environment too, right? Like I always turn the shower on real cold for about 30 seconds before I get out. And it just, I don't know this. I don't know the physical science stuff behind it, but I know it's there because I can feel the difference. Yeah. You have like I think it's in Finland and in Russia, I think they bring their kids, maybe babies, to like these polar plunges. I can't say for sure that they do polar plunge, but they get outside and they expose themselves to colder air. And I know from a standpoint of the science, I looked for some good studies on it. There was a bit of a debate about the benefits of it. But if you think about what it does to be exposed to cold and to be exposed to heat, we're typically in a 70-degree environment all day long. And there's no challenge, right or left, right, warm or cold in that environment. So in the summertime, we come back inside, it's maintained similar temperature. Wintertime, similar temperature. Now, if you go outside and you start adapting to that colder temperature, as you would with a cold shower, you're forcing your body's circulatory system to respond and react. Your brain has to sense, okay, what is the temperature outside? How much do I need to circulate the blood? Do I need to pull it back to my organs, my visceral organs, and away from the extremities? And that's an adaptation move, right? And the more adaptable we are in a controlled environment, just like with exercise, you're challenging yourself. You're saying, hey, heart, beat a little faster, beat a little stronger at a pace that I can sustain for 20, 30 minutes and adapt to that, right? The more you do it, the more regularly you do it, you're adapting to that challenge. So just like the cold, just like the exercise, just like different, even with fasting. Oh, hey, I'm going to skip breakfast and have breakfast at lunchtime. I'm forcing my body to adapt to a challenge, challenge or a stressor that is controlled by me.
Yeah.
I become more adaptable. My range of tolerance becomes wider. And now with time, I'm able to handle more.
Yeah. You're training your body.
Totally.
And you're training your body how to adapt to different environmental changes. And you could train your body to deal with stress too, I would imagine. So
definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great place to end our conversation. Thank you so much for talking with me. I think this is really valuable. And I always love the insights that you have and that you've been sharing with me over the last couple of years. So I appreciate it.
You're so welcome, Angela. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If you have found value in these episodes, please be sure to share and subscribe. I have so much more in store with guests that I can't wait to learn from.